The security guard looked at the crumpled resume and laughed out loud. Actually laughed. "Buddy, this isn't a soup kitchen. This is a federal building." The old man in the worn army jacket just stood there, hands steady, eyes forward, saying nothing. What that guard didn't know was that in exactly 11 minutes, a black SUV would pull up to that very entrance, and the most powerful intelligence officer in the country would step out asking for one person by name. Not the guard, not the supervisor, the homeless man with the tattered paperwork. If you believe every veteran deserves respect regardless of their appearance, comment "honor" right now. Marcus Webb had been standing in line since 5 in the morning. The job fair at the Hoover Federal Building was his last shot. 3 months on the streets had taught him that pride doesn't keep you warm and dignity doesn't fill your stomach. He'd showered at the YMCA, borrowed a razor from another man at the shelter, and pressed his old army jacket as best he could with a clothing iron that barely worked. The resume in his hand was typed at the public library, printed for 15 cents a page. It was wrinkled because he'd slept with it inside his jacket to keep it dry. He was 63 years old. He wanted nothing more than a simple job, a night shift, a desk somewhere, enough money to rent a room with a door that locked. The line moved slowly. Marcus watched younger men in crisp suits walk past the queue and straight through the doors. Connections, networking, the new economy. He understood. He didn't complain. When he finally reached the front entrance, the security guard, a thick-necked man in his 30s with a name tag reading Dominic, held up a hand. "Employment fair is for credentialed applicants. You got credentials?" Marcus handed over his resume. Dominic didn't even look at it, he looked at Marcus. At the frayed collar, at the boots held together with the electrical tape, at the face weathered by seasons spent sleeping in doorways. "This some kind of joke?" Marcus said nothing. "I asked you a question, old-timer. You got credentials or not?" Marcus pointed to the resume. "It's all there." Dominic made a show of reading it, his lips curling. "Says here you were in the army. That was, 40 years ago? And this gap from 1983 to 2019? What, you were finding yourself?" The men in line behind Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Someone snickered. Marcus kept his eyes forward. He'd learned a long time ago that some battles aren't worth fighting with fists or words. "I served my country," he said quietly. "I'm asking for a chance to serve again. That's all." Dominic folded the resume and handed it back. "Look, I'm going to do you a favour. Walk away, go find a shelter, get yourself cleaned up, maybe try McDonald's. They're always hiring. This here is a federal building, we got standards." He said that last word like it was a weapon. Standards. As if Marcus didn't know what standards meant. As if he hadn't lived and bled by standards most men couldn't imagine. A woman in a business suit behind Marcus spoke up. "Can we move this along? Some of us have actual appointments." Dominic waved her through. "Go ahead, ma'am. Sorry for the delay." He turned back to Marcus. "You heard the lady. Move along." Marcus stepped aside. He didn't leave. He sat down on a concrete bench near the entrance, the February wind cutting through his jacket. He'd wait. Maybe someone else would come on shift. Maybe someone would see past the torn fabric and the unshaven face. He'd waited in worse places for longer. The minutes passed. Dominic glanced over occasionally, smirking, whispering to a colleague. At one point he called out, "Still here. Benches are for visitors, not vagrants." Marcus didn't respond. He watched the pigeons. He watched the flags snapping in the wind. He thought about a valley in a country most Americans couldn't find on a map, where he'd once held a dying boy who'd saved his life and asked him in broken English to tell his mother he was brave. He thought about the 37 men and women whose names he still whispered every night before sleep, if sleep came at all. At exactly 10:47 a.m., a black Chevrolet Suburban with government plates pulled up to the curb. Not unusual for a federal building, but this one was followed by 2 more. Dominic straightened. 3 men in suits stepped out first, eyes scanning, hands near their waists. Then the rear door of the middle vehicle opened. A woman in her late 50s emerged, silver hair pulled back, wearing a charcoal coat over a navy suit. She moved with the kind of authority that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. Dominic practically ran to the entrance. "Ma'am, welcome to the Hoover Building. How can I assist?" She walked past him without a glance. Her eyes were fixed on the bench, on Marcus. She stopped 3 feet away from him. The entire entrance went silent. "Hello, ghost," she said softly. Marcus looked up. For the first time that morning, something flickered across his face. recognition, memory, pain. "Director," he said. Dominic's face lost all colour. "I'm sorry, Director." One of the suited men stepped forward. "This is Director Catherine Holt, Central Intelligence Agency." The words hung in the frozen air. Director Holt didn't look at Dominic. She was still watching Marcus, her eyes glistening. 18 months, she said. 18 months I've had people looking for you. You disappeared after... "I know when I disappeared," Marcus said. He stood slowly, his joints protesting. "Why are you here, Kate?" "Because I finally found you. Because you saved my life in Kandahar when I was a 26-year-old case officer who didn't know the difference between cover and concealment. Because you carried me 4 miles through hostile territory with a bullet in your shoulder." She reached into her coat and pulled out a worn photograph. A young woman and a younger Marcus standing in front of a mud brick wall, grinning. "Because you're the reason I'm alive to hold this job," Dominic stepped forward, his voice cracking. "Ma'am, I had no idea." Director Holt turned to him slowly. "You had no idea that a man asking for honest work might deserve basic human decency. You needed a motorcade to teach you that?" She looked at his name tag. "Dominic, I'll remember that." She turned back to Marcus. "I didn't come to embarrass anyone. I came because we owe you. Not just me, the agency, the country, 41 missions, 18 extractions, 11 personnel recovered from situations everyone else called hopeless. And you never asked for a single thing. Not recognition, not money, not even a pension you legally earned because your operations were so classified that officially they never happened." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't do it for any of that." "I know, that's exactly why you deserve it." Director Holt gestured to one of her aides, who handed her a leather folder. "This is a formal offer of employment. Security consultant. Your clearance has been reinstated. Yes, even after all this time, some of us kept the paperwork active just in case. Full benefits. Back pay for the pension you should have been receiving for the last 20 years, and an apartment in Arlington if you want it." Marcus stared at the folder, his hands trembled slightly as he took it. "You didn't have to do this." "You're right, I didn't have to. I wanted to. There's a difference." She glanced at Dominic, then back at Marcus. "Some people help others because it's their job. Some people help others because of who they are. You taught me which kind to be." Marcus opened the folder. Inside, clipped to the employment offer, was a small medal, silver, unmarked. He knew what it was. Very few people in the world would. "You kept it," he whispered. "I told you I would. 29 years ago. I don't break promises to people who matter." The crowd that had gathered watched in silence as Marcus Webb, the homeless veteran they'd ignored or dismissed, was escorted to the waiting SUV by the director of the Central Intelligence Agency herself. Dominic stood frozen at his post, the weight of what he'd done settling into his bones. Later that week he would request a transfer. Later that month he would begin volunteering at a veterans shelter downtown. Not because anyone required it, but because he couldn't sleep until he did. The Hoover Building implemented new training protocols for all personnel, and Marcus Webb, after 41 missions that officially never existed, finally came home to a country that remembered his name. On his first day as a security consultant, he passed through the very entrance where he'd been mocked. He was wearing a new suit. His credentials were immaculate. And when a young man in a worn jacket approached the desk, resume in hand, Marcus stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "Let me see that," he said gently. "Tell me about yourself." The world changes one moment of respect at a time. If you believe that every person deserves dignity, that heroes don't always wear their medals where we can see them, and that how we treat the forgotten reveals who we truly are, subscribe to this channel, share this story, and the next time you see someone struggling, remember, you never know who's standing in front of you.